most of conventional strength and conditioning is integrated heavily with the rah-rah, bang your chest, get your guys fired up. In this realm, it's a very measured and almost like vacuum effect where we are just kind of enriching ourselves into that moment. And the toughness element of it is having the discipline to stay very present in these moments that we're in and focus exclusively on whatever the fuck it is we're focusing on that moment. I always gravitate towards people that are just very direct and, have that disregard for, what is, social construct and expectation and shit. And it generates a good theme for like where I'm trying to get at with this thing tonight, because I think between the two of us having a lot of similarity in the way we perceive things and kind of how we go about shit, and then having some dissimilarities in population, clientele, age, background, and, just kind of general way about them, tying it into the mental toughness and the mental health shit. The mental toughness piece, I think, is something that we can put a unique kind of twist on, because your world exclusively tries to model that after my world.
Yeah.
What y'all do to model it is unequivocally wrong. And you know this, but I can verify it, so to speak, coming from these, no shit, hard-nosed Navy SEALs, baddest dudes in the world, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's so much more measured and precise and calculated. And it's not about this rah-rah, beat your chest and go until you can't stand. No, like, it's being extremely disciplined.
Right.
Committed to the mundane things in life and doing them over and over and over and over again, developing your skill, developing your craft. That is the quintessential definition of mental toughness from the community.
Absolutely, yeah. I was actually thinking about that yesterday. I don't know what the hell I was thinking about, but that popped in my mind. Like, it's not that these guys in the military, special operations, those type of things, it's not that they do these overly complex and overly exacerbated activities all the time. Is that those real simple things, like fucking basic training is push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, just simple shit that we all did back in elementary school. They just do it exceptionally well, and they can do it for as long as they need to do it, because that's the job. You know what I mean? It's not, we got to do, sandbag flips up a hill and then backflip back down. It's not all that shit and then lay in the fucking water on the beach.
Yeah.
That's not what it is. It's doing the most simple thing as well as you possibly can.
Yes. I'll add to that in saying it's on the sport coach side, right? Especially at the high school level, it's always the fat ass who can't, run a quarter mile without having an asthma attack or a heart attack, or, that's the one preaching this mental toughness shit and pushing kids. And, to kind of take the facetiousness out of it for a second, like, the reason why this is an important conversation to have is because every single year we're seeing kids die in organized, controlled conditioning and sport environments, which unequivocally is unacceptable and should never happen. Yeah. And it's not
high level institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the college level as well, but to the point, it's very rare that those situations aren't manifested from this belief or perception or culture, dare I say, of mental toughness, right?
Right.
So we're saying the same thing from the different lenses here, that, the misstep in this is looking to the elitists, the special operations, the special forces, and then trying to replicate that in concept or in theory. I don't think anybody would argue that, right? Like, you want to always model everything after the best. So
absolutely.
that part of it makes sense. But where they're going wrong is they are extracting the wrong pieces or elements of it and then just absolutely doing a terrible job of repackaging it.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I can kind of compare that to in the private sector at least, strength and conditioning versus personal training,
Sure.
right? Where you have personal trainers that train athletes and they take the conditioning aspect from strength and conditioning and make that the entire athletic development program where they're just beating the shit out of these kids.
Yeah.
Making them sweat as much as possible in the shortest amount of time and just extending that over an hour or so and calling that athletic performance, right? So it's the same idea with, us strength and conditioning for athletes trying to model our team development after military training and tactical performance, and just picking the wrong thing to replicate.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you would think at this point, especially as smart as we like to claim we are with all of these degrees and certifications, you would think we would figure it out by now, that it doesn't mean anything.
And well, not only the degrees and the certifications, but also the open communication forums, right?
Right.
Like that to me is an empirical resource for a lot of things, but this being one of them, where like you can see the real world, to an extent, obviously, but you can see the real world interactions of things and how these different worlds line up, right? And it's funny, man. Like early on at VHP, I had this dude who was much younger. He was 28 and he was working up, right? And I don't get a ton of dudes, this young. So it was a kind of a unique perspective, right? We're having an interaction one day and he just looks up to me and he was like, "Hey man, I just got to let you know, I got to where I am based on being motivated. I don't need you to push me. I don't need you to do anything in that capacity. I need you to give me the skills that are required for the physical traits that are needed for these tests." And he was like, the strategies that I can utilize when I'm there. So it was a really, just direct and impressionable moment for me where I was like, okay, most of conventional strength and conditioning is integrated heavily with the rah-rah, bang your chest, get your guys fired up. In this realm, it's a very measured and almost like vacuum effect where we are just kind of enriching ourselves into that moment. And the toughness element of it is having the discipline to stay very present in these moments that we're in and focus exclusively on whatever the fuck it is we're focusing on that moment. You know what I mean? So it's almost the complete inverse of what we preached. It's measured, it's calculated. There's an intensity to it, but it's a visceral intensity. It's, you can just kind of feel the energy, the flow of the session, and then know when to trek up and trek down or push up or push down, right? Have your little 1-2 phrases and know how to get, right into somebody's shit as you need to. But it's not this phantom charade of being maniacs and all, extroverted all the time and everything. We got to kind of dial in and we need to see that mental toughness is being able to live within your own discomfort within different moments, Yeah.
So, for sure. And I think I haven't been in the game that long, and I've seen, the guys that kind of built strength and conditioning up to how it is now. And I don't want to name people, I'll probably forget somebody, but anyways, it's like watching a bad episode of Saturday Night Live where it's just bad impressions of what we think strength and conditioning coaches are supposed to be. And trying to somehow intertwine our own personalities. I say not saying that I do that because I don't. I stopped yelling years ago. But is just trying to intertwine your own personality into it, and it doesn't really work because the rah-rah stuff is so overbearing that when you try to interject your own personality and try to really create the relationship with the athletes that need to be there, it just gets really awkward. And I've seen it firsthand and then experienced it as well. It's just really, I'm not really sure why it's like that and how to change it. But I completely get what you're saying about, how can I ask, when you train, do you ever train in groups or is it always one-on-one situation?
It's always one-on-one.
Always one-on-one. Okay. And that's not to say, it's like that because it's one-on-one. I try to treat, obviously I have to, elevate my voice to some degree when I work with groups, especially athletes. They're, dropping weights and everything, and just so they can hear me. But, and I've worked with teams and smaller groups, but it's never to the point where I feel like I just have to burst the blood vessel in my neck to keep the energy up. Right. The energy, if the big word in strength and conditioning is culture, right? Or sports in general is culture. So if the culture is really what we say it is, then the additional rah-rah isn't needed. And that's kind of that should be what is taken from tactical performance and military operations is what culture really is and how to integrate that into the program itself for the sport and for the training.
Well, I mean, speaking vicariously, of course, but for that aspect, that is something that is 100% built on a foundation of accountability, peer accountability.
For sure.
But now this is one where like we hear a lot of the common, almost just jargon at this point that's just recycled over and over. But accountability is something that hearing it and kind of seeing it, from this population was powerful, right? Like just hearing guys recount stories of missions or deployments or whatever. And, when somebody's being genuine with this type of shit, you just see the effects, of their face or their body language when they talk about, how motivated they were because of the dude next to them or because of, their CO or the dude that brought them up and how just enriched they are in that bond and continuity. When you think about it in a tangible or a practical sense, you're thinking about a group of men and women that are being, placed in literally the most heinous and just absolutely chaotic areas of the world and going to be in very real life or death situations. So if y'all don't have anything else, you better have camaraderie, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's for like, sure. I mean, but again, we take that conceptual trait of the military and we take it into a team setting. And what's one of the most common phrases that's thrown around with this one, right? We're going to war, right? Friday night, it's we're going to war. No, the fuck you're not. It's not war, right? And it's not that it's like a disrespectful thing or whatever. It's just an impractical and an irrational way to view what you're getting into that night. You're going to play a sport. It's a game. It's a competitive match, and it matters tremendously, and it's intense, and there is collision and violence and risk of injury and well-being and, the team element of it. But you need to understand that in context, and that's okay.
Right. It's interesting, at least from my perspective, and I've heard the Friday Night War battle cry shit. And a lot of it I've heard from guys that were in the military. So in my mind, it's two things. Either they're stuck in that mindset, which is cool. But then they try to take that same mindset and put it into coaching. And that's where a lot of the disconnect, at least from my perspective, gets to the players, especially younger athletes.
Because going back to like, my original point there, when we look at the replication effect and what, team-based, and sport-based athletes should look to model after the military, forces is the camaraderie and the peer accountability. That is the essential part of that. and again, instead of, especially with younger kids, but like instead of getting your 12 to 15-year-olds revved up talking about going to war, right? Don't inspire them or try to excite them with the theatrics of war. Have them understand the sense of accountability for one another, the trust in one another, and the singularity of doing your job and doing it to the best of your ability, and the responsibility that you have to be at practice and to be at film and to get into your playbooks so that you can pull your weight when it comes time to go to war or to, play a game. Like, that's the comparison.
Yeah, because really all the wartime pregame stuff, all that turns into is, six or seven kids just going hard as hell, losing all discipline, right? Losing all discipline and just doing their own thing because it's wartime, right? Not understanding the context of how war actually works.
And I think, especially again with kids, I think that they can, and I may actually be, guilty of this when I was coming up, right? I think kids feel like they can over mask a lack of preparation with an ounce of intensity. They think if I can just charge up 10% more on Friday or on Saturday night or whatever it is, maybe I can go out on Thursday night. Maybe I can hang out and chill on Friday, right?
Yep.
No. Yep. You got to dial in. You have to lock in, and you have to do everything that you can to prepare as adequately as possible, not for your own outcome, but for the betterment of the dude next to you or the girl next to you. That's the part that I think is just egregiously overlooked, and an extremely valuable lesson, to impart on someone, on a young adult, that would carry over, well beyond just the context of sport. That's a life value. That's something that, I emphasize heavily, with our staff and with everybody that I end up, doing any kind of work stuff with is, you have to make sure that you are keeping your shit straight, not just for your own advancement, but because everyone around you is in some way reliant on you pulling your weight. And I think that's something that we should take with some pride.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had, to give a real life example, the opportunity. So in Virginia, we played the fall sports last school year. We played fall sports in the spring. But so we came up with a team slogan, I guess you would say, and it was party, but it was PARD. So that was preparation, accountability, relentlessness, and discipline, right? And we would say that before practice, we would say that after practice, every breakdown, everything we did, it was party, right? And so it got to the point where I would leave, obviously, because I was a strength and conditioning coach, I would leave the warm-ups, the sprint workouts, the regular training sessions, defensive coordinator. Everything we did was surrounded around this idea of party, because what we wanted to do as a coaching staff was make sure, because we knew, especially how things were looking for our program. The program almost ended 2 years before. And so what we wanted to do was make sure, one, that we were building the program up, at least to a point where the kids enjoyed it and they got something out of it, right? And it wasn't just, all right, we'll just show up to practice and get through this the best we can. We know we're going to lose. Let's just make it through. We wanted to be more than that. So, we wanted it to be able to reflect, because everybody says football is the greatest game because it teaches you about life. But nobody's really teaching the life lessons, right? Nobody's really teaching the skills that you actually need in life. It's not just about just go hard and it's going to hurt and you got to keep you like, it's a little bit more than that. So the party was just to make sure they understood, like, if you take these 4 principles that we're laying out, preparation, accountability, relentlessness, and discipline, right? Even 2 or 3 of them, if you take those things, you'll be successful. Obviously, we want you to take all 4, right? But because everybody says, as cliche as it is, it's more than the game, right? And it is. It's more than the game. But again, if we're not explaining to them what the more is, then we're just saying shit. So, just getting them to the point to understand you have to prepare whatever it is you want to do in life. whatever it is you have to do in life, you have to prepare for it, right? Or it's going to be a shit show, right? You got to be accountable in all things that you do for yourself, first and foremost,
Yep.
and then for the people beside you, right? If you're not accountable for yourself, then, you know, you can't, you know, talk about somebody else's grass and just dog shit all over yours.
Yeah.
And then, you know, relentlessly discipline, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so that was how it worked out. And I would have liked to stay longer to really play it out longer into a bigger theme and a bigger picture thing. But I think just, you know, laying that foundation, I'm a foundation guy.
Yeah.
So just laying that foundation, you know, I think really, and they were, you know, fairly successful this year playing a full season. But just carrying that over into every other aspect in life, right? If I tell you enough things, and I've made my fair share of mistakes, and like we had this conversation a few weeks ago on Twitter, like it's some shit I probably shouldn't have made it out of, but I did.
Yeah.
You know, so just taking those things that I've learned, and you know, I still make mistakes to this day, but understanding that, you know, principles above everything. If you have principles in place that you can live by, you know what I mean, then you'll be okay, right? It's gonna suck, you know that, and that this is the mental health piece, right? Understanding that, you know, it's pretty bad for everybody. There are very few people that are comfortable in life. Everybody got something, and you know, just hold on to that, and then try to work the best you can to get through it. And through it is kind of the main idea, because going around it, you know, it's just going to come back.
Yeah.
Right. You got to go through it and keep rolling. And that was one of the things I wrote in my notes off the outline you sent. Just giving athletes I don't want to use the term safe space, but
I mean,
just giving them the platform, give them the opportunity to just, you know, express what it is they got going on. And I know it's tough in some situations because we're so limited on time with the athletes you work with, especially in school. You know, but you know, they have to have the opportunity to speak their piece, for the lack of.
This is another part where you think you understand, you know, kind of how that military space, you know, is involved with this type of shit, right? With the, you know, with the mental health space and with the mental toughness space. But it's another one that has just been a really profound thing to actualize and to really start to see and hear, you know, what it's about. And, you know, it's funny with the younger population, you know, I think that the biggest challenges with mental health, because, you know, like you alluded to, and like I just talked about in that webinar, sweat equity, right? You know, we've had some situations, right? And it's not, you know, necessarily within the scope of this talk, but I think that is some of the most valuable shit that I've ever been fortunate to experience or have happened to me, because you really start to understand things differently when you don't have options.
Yeah.
When you don't have options, it forces a different perspective on things, right? So with younger kids, I think that the main issues, these, you know, more recently, I hate saying nowadays, more recently has been all existentially based or largely existentially based, where we're so infatuated with these, you know, materialized environments and you know, the social expectations are just absurd. And that's got to be a tremendous amount of pressure for a kid, man. I can't imagine having to manage a goddamn Instagram account at 16. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
How I would have been on Twitter, like it's just different, you know. So but to the point, man, you know, the anxieties and the depressions and, you know, just even the ones that are lesser recognized with, you know, borderline personality disorders, not being able to really control emotion or not really even understanding what emotions are, and, you know, just having, you know, self-identity crisis or conflicts, you know, that you're working through. I mean, there's just so much going on in the world now. It's just got to be very challenging to be a kid. And, you know, the mental health piece is something that again, illegally. I'm not a therapist or whatever, but you know, we spend a lot of intimate time. And if you look to the college setting, for example, a lot of those athletes most singularly point back to the strength and conditioning coaches being that impactful figure, because that's the one that's there when the coaching staff is out recruiting and trying to get the next talent group in, right? We just saw Tommy Moffitt, who's an absolute legend, you know, for some unbelievable reason, be, you know, canned from LSU. And just the response from Matthew and Ryan Clark and all these dudes from LSU and how much it meant to them. So you know that the conversations are going to get dense in those settings. And I think that it should be, you know, something that we're cognizant of to be prepared for. And that was a big part of my intake at VHP was, hey, this is something that is it's just a part of this population. So we understand that we're not credentialed for it. We understand that we're not qualified, but I'm a fucking human. And if I'm spending abundant time with somebody and shit happens to get personal or something, you know, happens to come out or get discussed, then we need to know how to prepare and handle ourselves for that.
Absolutely.
You know, I'll kind of just, you know, put it into some bullet points. But the first thing that I've taken from this is that you can never, ever, ever assume or associate somebody's mental well-being based on the person that they present. And absolutely has absolutely nothing to do with ability, status, in my case, rank or strength or social likability. It has nothing to do with any of those things, man. I've seen some wild shit where, you know, dudes can just be 100%. You wouldn't think anything is wrong ever.
Right.
And finding out after the fact that this dude's going through a traumatic divorce, or he's, you know, been battling severe depression for 10 years and, you know, and you would just never be able to tell. So that really punched me in the face that, you know, just because somebody presents themselves a certain way, that does not indicate how they're feeling mentally or how they're feeling emotionally. The second thing is that we have to expand this conversation. We have to expand not just the ability to have these conversations or dialogue, but also just have it be more integrated into our daily mannerisms and operations. And that's not to say to sit everyone down and, you know, tell me how you're feeling today. But what I mean by that is that when it does occur, there isn't that initial pushback or timidness of, oh shit, what do I say? You know, do I talk about that? Or, you know, it needs to be a little bit more compatible in that it's not this uncomfortable thing that is unique to one or two people, man. Like you said, there are a lot of people struggling on a lot of different planes. Mm-hmm. So if we can sense the commonality in the general fact that we are all struggling and have had to overcome shit and have, you know, bad things fall our way, then maybe it shouldn't be so inappropriate or almost off-putting to have dialogue or discourse when it's needed. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, the last thing with this population is, it's going to sound almost like I'm trying to pitch something, but the importance of physical health for mental health. Mm-hmm. It's so instrumental. And a lot of my, you know, kind of sidebar research includes a lot of, you know, brain stuff. It's a lot of TBI, concussion, you know, and then just kind of, you know, effects from that world. And so it leads me down these different rabbit holes, but the outcome always being a body in motion is a body in being.
Yeah.
You know? And if you are sedentary and if you are, you know, isolated or reluctant to, you know, train or to go out and work out or whatever, then it affects you chemically and cognitively. So there are absolutely cases where, you know, medications are required and therapy is required. And there are, you know, much more severe cases that require those appropriate things. However, there's a large part of the population that can do so much good for their mental space by just regularly exercising, eat the right shit, and sleep. And that will take care of a good bit.
Yeah, especially I've been listening to I think you put me on to him actually, Andrew Huberman. I was actually listening to a podcast today, And I'll be completely honest, a lot of the shit he's talking about, I am
Nobody,
way over.
nobody in the world makes me feel dumber than that dude right there.
Yeah, I still listen because like when he gets to the later part of the podcast, it's always, broken down to a point where I like, all right, my stupid weight room brain can understand this. But just the sleep part is really like probably every session, especially for the high school and college kids, I always like make sure you are drinking plenty of water and go to sleep. Like, and that's actually I posted on Twitter and shared it on Instagram. Like there's nothing more important right now than your health. Like there's no test, no project, no party, no
relationship.
Nothing. No, exactly. There's nothing as important as your health right now. Right?
Yeah.
When you get your health in check, your mental health as well as your physical health, right? When you get both of those things in check, everything else will naturally line up because
it's symbiotic. Yeah.
Exactly. And a big part from at least my end of, and I'm sure with you as well, but going back to just giving a place to express themselves, I probably wrote it like 6 times in my notes of like just building relationships from a coaching perspective, building relationships with the athletes that we work with and clients as well. Just building relationships so they feel comfortable, like you said. Because, if you ask them, hey, how you doing today? I'm fine. Like, that's not, that's not getting anywhere. Could be something deeper. Yeah. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just fine. But if you have a relationship like, I'm fine, and then they continue, blah, blah, blah. Actually, today at school sucked, whatever. My girlfriend broke up with me, whatever it may be, having that relationship where the conversation can expand.
So for me, and it's, for me, it's like essentially kind of a badge of honor. If one of the athletes that I'm working with is comfortable enough with me, to open up because of how reclusive and reserved these dudes tend to be. So, it was instructed to me from my boss, from my manager, don't take that lightly, right? Because if they're opening up to you, then that kind of means something, and I'm sure it's the same for you and with the kids.
Absolutely.
But to that end, you mentioned it or alluded to it earlier. I've always just looked at my role as being the best listener that I can be, and just really try to demonstrate that I'm invested in what they're saying, whatever it is. I don't know if I can help you or not. In some cases I can, in other cases I can't. But I'm going to genuinely give you my undivided attention and let you get off whatever you got to get off, and we can talk about whatever to whatever length, but I'm at your pace, and that's just really how I've always approached it. And I guess anecdotally, I can say that it's been serviceable because I'm first and foremost not trying to violate or overstep in this situation. Secondarily, I know that I'm strapped with the credentials and the space or the title to really have those types of conversations in a work setting. But again, I need to emphasize being a human right now.
Absolutely.
And I just got to do what I got to do. And if we need to have an intense talk, we'll get there. We'll have that.
That's one of the things that's frustrating about strength and conditioning coaches is that we, at least from what I've seen on Twitter, everybody wants to emphasize, treat the athlete as a human first.
Yeah.
Right. But nobody is real. Like, we're still doing the same shit.
Right.
We're still focused on, what's the best program this month, or what's the best system to use? What type of technology is out now? We're not really focused on humans.
Yeah.
We say we are, right? It's not real.
Right.
It's not real at all. At least this is my opinion, of course, from what I've observed. And I guess it is, again, a little bit easier for me because I run my own space. But if you're going to say it, you got to follow through, because it's not just us that can see it. Like you said earlier, the kids are on social media too. They can see this, right? The reason Tommy Moffitt is so beloved by all of his former athletes is because he was real. You know what I mean? The stuff people have been posting about him, that's not lip service. They really genuinely mean it. So, you know, if we're going to say these people they need to be treated as humans first, then we have to treat them as humans first. And, you know, we have to take a day away from training, you know, just to, you know, let's go outside and walk around and, you know, bullshit maybe, or let's just talk, or let's have open office hours. You know what I mean? You don't like missing one day of training while it could be, not even detrimental. Missing one day of training isn't going to ruin anybody, right? If you give the opportunity, you know, to show people that you look at them as human first, you're there for them first if they need you, right? Then when the training comes, they'll be fully bought in, as we like to say.
So here's the other interesting element. So I get a short time in duration with my athletes. Everybody I see for 4 weeks. Rarely, sometimes I'll get a couple more. But even though it's a short duration, I see people twice a day. So I'm spending 2 hours, 5 days a week with people.
Yeah.
So those conversations expedite quick, right? You know, by day 2 afternoon, we've pretty much got our bases covered. So it's again, like, to use the same word, it's kind of paradoxical, because it's like I've had some intense conversations with dudes, and, you know, have really, I mean, I'm so fortunate to have the experience that I've had at BHP, man. And
yeah,
I just have a tremendous sense of admiration for these people, but I have to have these very intense conversations realistically only knowing somebody for 9 days.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Wow.
You know? And, like, again, I think I take a sense of pride in that, and I take a tremendous sense of honor in that. But I think that has helped me to kind of expedite this learning curve, because it's like, hey, man, like, we're gridlocked. We're going to be here 2 hours a day for the next 4 weeks. So we're going to get familiar, you know?
Yeah.
Learn, you know?
Yeah, you absolutely have to.
There's so much shit that we can fucking talk about and keep going on about, man. This is like, I could take this a million different directions. Shit, who knows? If this draws some views, maybe we'll chop it up a couple more times.
Part 2.